Welcome to Celebrating Act Two. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.
Hey, it's great to see you all again, and we're here with Herbie J Pilato. Everything television, all time, but especially the golden age of television. The golden age that I remember, which was like 50, 60, 70, 80, and stuff in between. Anyway, Herbie J, how are you?
I'm very well, guys. How are you, Art and John? My two favorite people. Truly, you're two of my favorite people because you're just, I don't know, so charming, and that's a key to success in this world today. I think charm.
Love you
Oh,
back.
yeah? Who says so? Herbie J, thank you. That's a nice compliment coming from you. We appreciate that. But the other day, because you are a television expert, you've written a dozen books on television. You've been an executive. You've been a performer. You've been a producer. You got your own television show.
Yes, I do.
Streaming on Amazon.
Very great.
And again with Herbie J Pilato. And you're writing for Emmys.com, writing for the Television Academy, which I would think would be a big honor. They don't just let anybody.
Honor. I'm so honored to be writing for the Television Academy.
So you're the guy. All of that buildup is to say that you're the guy that I need to ask about a show that I saw on YouTube. Thank you, YouTube, with Henry Fonda. It was a sitcom. And boy, did he look at, now this is 1970 something or other.
71.
71. And he looked really out of, there's a lot of things that I noticed about this old sitcom. But boy, did he seem out of place doing
I don't even remember Henry Fonda in a sitcom.
I didn't either. If I hadn't seen it on YouTube, I would not believed it.
Is this true, Herbie J?
Yeah. It was an odd little show called The Smith Family, and it was produced by Don Feddersen, who did My Three Sons. But it was a half hour. It really didn't know what it was. It was like a cross between My Three Sons and Father Knows Best and Dragnet and Adam 12, because it was a half hour show without a laugh track, and he played a police detective father of three children, one of whom was Ron Howard, right before Happy Days. Yes. And it just never seemed to find its vibe. It was just a lost little show, and it had beautiful theme music at the beginning, sung by Mike Miner, by the way, who played on Petticoat Junction. And it was Red Rose Lane, Primrose Lane, da 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 da. But then when it went to second season, they turned it into like a Mannix opening, and there was a pulsating music, and then by the end of the opening credits, all the family was together in front of their house smiling. It was a schizophrenic series. It didn't know what it was.
Well, it seems to be back in the day, and that being the day, a lot of people who were successful in television made movies, and first of all, most movie stars seem to be reluctant to go to the little screen about how it would make them appear to be, well, now they're no longer this star of the big screen, and they've got to go to the little screen to earn some bucks and so on and so forth. How they even talk Henry Fonda, who was a huge success for decades on the big screen, to even try out television. That seems, that was probably a magical trick in and of itself, and a great backstory.
Yes. Well, today it's all different. Movie stars and TV stars are all melding into one, especially because of the pandemic and what's been happening, where movies are now debuting online. But in 71, Henry Fonda was getting older, and Jimmy Stewart came back to TV with the Jimmy Stewart Show on NBC. So ABC lured Henry Fonda with, of course, moolah, lots of it, to do this sitcom. And because it was so different, and because it was so unique, and that it wasn't going to be a regular sitcom, and that he got to play this detective, and he trusted, Don Feddersen, a reputable producer, certainly from My Three Sons and Family Affair, he gave it a shot. But somewhere along the line, I think the producers just did not have a strong vision of what the show was supposed to be. And it didn't really grab hold. They didn't have a solid grip on the premise and on what they wanted it to be, and they confused everybody. Now, however, having said all of that, The Smith Show is one of my favorite shows of all time.
Really?
Because it was still cozy and sweet and adorable, and it was the last remnant of what TV used to be during the big changeover of what was happening with All in the Family and Maude and all of that, and the lovely theme music. I just adored the Smith family. As bad as some people say it was, I loved it. I loved it.
Wow, that's interesting. Of course, I never saw it until last week anyway. I never knew it existed. You know, Smith, the Smith family, Smith being a common name, I thought was a pretty bad title. But nevertheless, I never saw it. And so I just did not appreciate it like you did.
Well, you know, and Smith was a popular name on ABC at the time because right when the Smith family debuted in 1971, Alias Smith and Jones, which was a completely different series altogether, also debuted on ABC.
Yep,
and that was a 1 hour innovative comedy Western starring the great Pete Duel, unfortunately, who passed away, who killed himself during the series production, and the great Ben Murphy. And I kind of had a connection to Alias Smith and Jones personal-wise. Pete Duel is from Rochester, New York. And I had a family member who had known Pete Duel growing up in Rochester. So that made it kind of personal for me. But Alias Smith and Jones, man, it was so unique. It was, you know, the Bonanza, it wasn't, or Ponderosa, it wasn't. Gunsmoke, it wasn't. What it was a TV version of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun and full of adventure.
But I would say that if there's a lesson to be learned, is if you're going to try out a new show on television, don't put the word Smith in its name.
Well, it's funny because as a kid, I knew who Smith and Jones were, but I didn't know who Alias was. I'm like, well, where's the third person? I thought Alias was a name. I love this the Alias Smith and Jones. Loved it. It's a terrific show.
And that didn't continue for more than 2 or 3 seasons because the lead killed himself?
What happened was during the middle of the second season, Pete Duel killed himself. And the great Roger Davis, who was the narrator of the show and who also was a Dark Shadows icon from that series, he replaced Pete Duel. Now, the interesting thing here is that the original pre-pilot for Alias Smith and Jones starred not Ben Murphy and Pete Duel, but Pete Duel and Roger Davis. So Roger Davis and Pete Duel were really the original stars of Alias Smith and Jones with a pilot called The Young Country, okay? But when that Young Country pilot did not sell, ABC wanted to reboot the idea, and it became Alias Smith and Jones. Now, because I believe Roy Huggins had more power with the Young Country, as opposed to Alias Smith and Jones, it was still basically his idea, and he was a producer on the series. But Glenn Larson, when he took over, he's the one who ultimately replaced Roger Davis with Ben Murphy, who was terrific anyway, too. And Roger Davis actually did a guest spot on Alias Smith and Jones while he was narrating the show. And then when Pete Duel passed away, the producers went to Roger and said, could you please replace Pete Duel? And this was a very difficult decision for Roger because he was good friends with Peter. And also coming in on a show that had already been established, like, you know, Dick York from Bewitched having Dick Sargent replaced, it was tough. But Roger did a terrific job in replacing or in playing that, stepping in for Pete Duell's part there. But many felt the show was not the same, and that's really only because the show was established with Pete. In other words, if Roger had starred in the series and left the show for whatever reason, and then been replaced by Pete Duell, people would have felt the same way, towards Pete Duell. So it was an awkward situation all the way around. But Pete Duell, either way, Pete Duell, Roger Davis, and Ben Murphy were all terrific on the show.
Yeah, interesting that you could change you change the actors, and it changes the show.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's the same show, you can't guarantee that people are going to look at it the same way, which makes the Bewitched, the switching of the Darrens and Bewitched, really, really, really unique that it succeeded that way.
Yeah, but Elizabeth Montgomery was such an overwhelming presence on that show that everybody else was sort of just like a blurred piece of background.
It's true. With Bewitched, well, I don't know about that, but with Bewitched, Elizabeth was the star. It's the same thing with Barbara Eden on Deanie. They could have had anyone really have played Major Nelson. Larry Hagman did a terrific job, but they could have had anyone play him. And Dick York was a tremendous, certainly a participant of Bewitched, but the show was still about Samantha. However, when Dick Sargent replaced Dick York, the show dropped in ratings. On Alias Smith Jones, when Roger Davis replaced Pete Duell, the show was still a hit. It was still a hit. It's not as though people didn't notice, and even though it really kind of wasn't the same for some viewers, it was still getting high ratings. So, I mean, there's no set path to success or no set premise to success for television, for a television show. You just never know. There's always so many different factors involved.
Herbie, you just glossed over some great names of television producers, and at some time in the future, let's talk about people like Roy Huggins and Glenn Larson, and there are hundreds of them. They don't get the attention that the actors get, but as we just discussed, they're really instrumental in making these shows work, good or bad. Sometimes they're instrumental in making them not work.
The Fugitive. There's not a better television show in the history of the medium than The Fugitive. So I'd love to come back and talk about that.
Yeah, good. So that's for another time. For right now, let's tell people how they can read your articles on Emmy.com.
Yes, Emmys.com.
The website for the Television Academy.
Yes, go to Emmys.com, plural, Emmys.com, and just do a search for Herbie J Pilato. And certainly there's a ton of other articles on Emmys that you could read as well. Just fantastic site. It's so honored to be working for the Television Academy. And then you could also go to HerbieJPilato.com and find the articles and find a link to those articles at Emmys.com through my website.
Good. And they are, you're right, both websites are a treasure trove of articles about television.
Thank you.
And I think we all love television.
This is what makes what makes you so unique, Herbie J, is that you know a lot about a lot as dealing with TV. And here you knew a lot about two things I never knew existed. Okay? So I'm sure you've got some other bird.
Basketball, I can't count, okay? But I know classic TV. That's what I know.
Well, we love the fact that you know it. We'll see you soon, Herbie. Next time we'll talk about producers.
Sounds great. Have a wonderful day.
For more on Celebrating Act Two, visit our webpage, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and tell your friends. Celebrating Act Two is the user manual for the second half of your life.